Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to my session on what can be automated to ease your day as a Microsoft Teams administrator. My name is Alexander Holmeset, and I work as a senior cloud consultant at Cloudway in Norway, where I do a lot of automation around Teams using PowerShell, Graph API, and LogicApps. So I'd like to start off the session with a little quote. Don't be automated out of a job, be the automator. And automation becomes more and more important these days. And before starting to looking at how to automate stuff in Teams, part of my automation routines is Graph API. So I'm going to give you a crash course in how to use the Graph API so you can automate stuff in Teams. And a little history on where the graph started. In Office Graph, data in Office 365 was filed in individual silos. And these standalone silos were labeled users, groups, files, mails, and so on. And each silo had its very own unique API, which could cause a challenge for developers to access the data and then combining it together. For example, accessing users and people in Azure Active Directory required one set of rules, while accessing users and people in SharePoint required a second set of rules. And in addition, separate access tokens had to be created to access the data from different silos. And this was very time intensive and not a very clean methodology. And at development stages, it was called the Office 365 Unified API. And when it was released, they renamed it to Microsoft Graph API. And the Graph API provides you access to Office graph data with a single endpoint to display your data. And gone are the days of multiple tokens. And with the Graph API, you only need one access token, regardless of which Microsoft Cloud service that you're going to retrieve the data from. So the Graph API provides you a very sleek, seamless, and efficient access to information when you need it. And it really glues the Microsoft Cloud together. So we can communicate with the API through the link graph.microsoft.com by using HTTP methods. And this can be either get, post, patch, put, or delete request. So you authenticate through Azure AD, and after first authenticating, the communication uses an access token. So the first demo, let's see if I find the right browser here. We are going to use the Graph Explorer to get to know the Graph API. You could either choose to log on with your own user, or if you don't log on, you will get demo data from Microsoft. And here you choose different type of requests. So I'm going to do a GET request and choose if you want to use version 1 or beta, and the URL of what you're going to request. So in this case, this will be information about my user profile. So click Run. There you see you get the data down here. You also have a lot of other examples. You can get your email. So there's a lot of different things you can do with the Graph API. You also see some examples here for Teams. So you can get all the teams that you are joined to. But how would you do to create a group, for example? So the perfect companion to the Graph API is Microsoft Docs. And here you have a lot of resources on how to do the request and so on. So we wanted to create a group. So see here, go to group and create group. Here you see a little information on what this endpoint is, the permissions needed, the URL, and that this is a post request. And also what's needed in the request. And further down, you have an example of what the request should look like. This is in a format called JSON. We're just going to copy this, paste it into here, change the post, and change the URL to groups. give this another name since I probably have used this example before. And run query. Had this error earlier today also, even though I give it a random name, it says that the mail nickname is already used. So at least it's this way you are going to create groups with the graph explorer. So let's jump back to PowerPoint. And if you go into the Graph API pages and so on, you see a lot of words like JavaScript, Python, Node.js, and so on. And this sounds very complicated. And as I come from an IT operation background, I'm not really keen on learning programming. So what should we do? Should we just let this opportunity go away? Or only if I knew a tool I use my day-to-day operations that can handle HTTP calls? But wait, there is. I use it every day to automate those time-consuming operations tasks. It saves me hours of work every week. And it's great to process information with, and it handles it like objects. What tool is that? PowerShell, of course. And PowerShell have a command that's called invoke REST method. And it's exactly what we need. It sends a HTTP or HTTPS request to a RESTful web service. Before doing some graph requests, we're going to take a look at how to handle JSON formatting in PowerShell. So if I just copy the example from the graph docs pages directly into a variable, this won't work, since your editor don't understand JSON directly like this. And at first, I started with this. I used a lot of time to make it fit inside PowerShell ESE, but that's a lot of work combining it like this. So then I discovered something called a here string. You put an @ sign and a single quote at the first line, and a single quote and an @ sign at the last line. This way you can just copy paste the JSON request like this, and you get it inside a variable. And you can also use double quotes instead if you want to have variables inside your request. Let me take a look at the body now. See that it was replaced by the variables I had. So before doing the Graph API request itself, we need something called an Azure application. So we're going to go to portal.azure.com and go to app registration. So this is the application we're going to authenticate against. So we go new registration, give it a name, Consoverse demo, and click register. And here you may take note of the client ID and the tenant ID. And depending on if you're going to do the request as an end user or as an application, there's various configuration you need to do. So if you're going to do it as an end user, you need a redirect URI. So add platform and mobile and desktop, and I tend to use this one, loginmicrosoftonline.com. And the next thing, we might need to give this application some permissions. So we click permissions, add permissions, and Microsoft Graph and application, since we want to have this run in the background without any interruptions. And we want to create a group. So we find group, and you can use group create or even group read write all. Then you can create groups and read all groups also. So select this one, add permission. And the really important thing here is remember to click grant admin consent. If you just go out of this menu now, this won't be effective, so you won't have the rights you need. And grant. And the last thing we need is a secret. You can also use certificates, but we're going to use secret here. So new client secret, call it secret, and choose how long you want it to live, and add.
Hi, Alexander. Can you zoom?
And there we have the value of the secret you're going to use to get the token. Let's see here. Yeah, then we go back to PowerShell. And first of all, we're going to take a look at how to do user logon. And I'm not going to go too much into detail in the code here, but I'll give you some references on where you can find the various methods on the net. So we have specified the client ID and tenant ID. And this only works for Windows, since this will give you a pop-up with logon. So if I just run this code, you see we give me a modern logon window. So that wouldn't work if you use the PowerShell core on Linux or Windows, now on Mac OS, for example. And another way that works with the PowerShell core, if you're authenticating as a user, you authenticate with application code. So you run this, and then you get a URL to where you can go, and then you can copy this code, enter it, and then enter your username and password, and you will get a token. And the last one is application logon. You see I've specified client ID, tenant ID, and client secret. So load this code here. And you see this is the token we use to do the request. And this token usually lasts for about 1 hour. That's the default. So we would need to re-authenticate after an hour if you're doing a long automation job. So the next thing we're going to look at is trying to get something with the Graph API. So here you see that we have specified groups as the URL. We specified get, and the content is application/JSON, and we have the authorization token there in the end. So I'm going to run this and take a look at the value there. And see it lists all the groups in my tenant. Or something that's worth noting about this is that I think with at least with groups and teams, there's a limit of 500 or 1,000 groups per page. So you would need to do a request for the next link if you want to have the next 1,000 groups. So I have some good blog posts I can show you again later on how to do that. And how to create a group. That's the same URL, a request body, and we have also specified user to be owner, since this is done as an application. So we don't have any user to just automatically put as an owner. And oops. And you also see that I specified post instead here and a request body. And that's it. That's how easy it is to create a group with Graph API. Yes. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is what do I use? Do I use the PowerShell module for Teams, or do I use Graph API? I like to try to use Graph API as much as possible, but it's really up to preference. But Graph API don't do admin portal stuff. That you can do a lot of with the PowerShell module, but lately there's been a lot of ups and downs with the Teams PowerShell module, like breaking changes from version to version, and it's been painful. So I try to use Graph API as much as I can. And also the speed of the Graph API is a lot quicker than the PowerShell module. I'm going to try to create one group here and take the time with both Graph API and with PowerShell module. So let's try running the Graph API first. Where did it go? There we go. And it used to be a lot quicker, but you see it took 2 seconds to create a group with the Graph API. Earlier today, it took around 6 seconds. And so let's see I probably need to connect first to Microsoft Teams PowerShell. Using it here. Yep. And yesterday, when I tried to create 3 teams with the PowerShell module, it took over a minute for some reason. That it hasn't been that slow for me before, but it's at least slower than the Graph API. So let's see. I did this test earlier today also, and I just had to abort it because for some reason it has been really slow lately. So see, it took me 24 seconds to create with the Teams PowerShell module instead of the Graph API. And now we're going to take a look at a couple of small scripts that I have created and some community scripts also that others have created to see what's possible to automate with the Teams for Microsoft Teams. So I'm a bad commenter on my code, so I'll do a quick explanation here. So we get this one will count every tab in your tenant. So it gets all the groups, loads all sorts of applications you have, and then it goes through every group, checks if it's a team, and then it goes through every channel and checks what tabs are inside that channel. And some of the applications don't have an application ID, it's just URL. So I'm looking for URLs that has Excel in it, YouTube, Planner, and so on. And then group them together and make a statistic about it afterward. So we'll just try running this one. And this will probably take a long time, so I'm not going to run through my whole tenant. There's hundreds of groups there, so just give it a couple of seconds so we have some data. Here. Okay, let's try stop it there and take a look at the output. Here you see an overview of what tabs are used in my tenant. You have the wiki page, SharePoint, a general website, and YouTube. So then over to the next one. Can those that use the wiki page raise their hands? Yeah, I'm also a little frustrated that you can't turn off the wiki page by default. So that's why I remove it after creating the teams. So this is basically the same script. The only difference is that it goes through every channel and removes the wiki tab. So probably not wise to do it after a couple of years and so on, but have it inside of the routine when you create a team so it's automatically removed. Because some organizations don't really want to use the wiki page and then you just want to remove it. So I'll select this one. See if it does anything. It only outputs if it finds a team that contains the wiki page. There's it, wiki tab removed, and it can go on for this like this forever. Just stop it there. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is how to automate something in Auto Attendant. So if you open the Teams admin portal and go to Auto Attendant and create a new one. Oh, choose a time zone. Submit. I just need to copy the ID of it here so I have it. And if you go to call flows during holidays, this is painful to fill out every year and so on. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to automate this and maybe have it run on a schedule so it updates every year? I have a solution for that. A couple of years ago, I wrote a script that goes to the website officeholidays.com. And if you specify the country you live in, it gets all the holidays for that country. This is an awesome website. So first of all, we specify the auto tenant we have here and the country. So for Norway, and what this does, it goes through that page for that country and scrapes all the holidays that are listed there. You probably don't want all holidays though, but at least you can get them automatically. Then it formats them to the correct format, stores it as a CSV file, and then you import it into the auto tenant by using import CS auto tenant holidays. Let's try running this one. It shouldn't take that long. See here. There you go. It lists all the holidays it inputted. So if we go back to the admin portal now and do a refresh, go to holidays, you see it loaded all the holidays that this website had. So let's see what's next on the demo list. Yep. And another thing I usually set up for customers is some sort of request form so you have more control over teams. It's not really that you want to control your users, but maybe have them stop and think before they create a team. So they fill in a Microsoft form that sends a request, and then someone needs to approve it, and then it starts automation process that creates the team as you like it. I'll just need to find pre-recorded demo here because there's so many components. And so I had a customer that were moving from on-prem to the cloud, and they usually had their project on a file share. And when the next project started, they didn't really follow the template and didn't copy over every folder and document that they needed. So I created a routine for them with PowerShell and Forms, PowerAutomate, and Azure Automation. So we have a script here that uses a Graph API, SharePoint PnP PowerShell, and the Teams PowerShell module to create a predefined project field team with specified channels and folders and subfolders. And so the problem is when you create a team and a channel, the SharePoint folders aren't created before you click the file tab. So we need to create the channel folders also up front, and you can also put in subfolders. So the first step is to have Azure app registration, as we showed you a bit earlier here. So go to new registration again. This is our old demo, but it's still very practical for today. And you take a note of the client ID again, add the redirect URI. Here, skip ahead a little there. And we're going to add permissions. And what we're going to need is to be able to create a group and also read user profiles, because the person that will fill out the form will be the owner of the team. So here, I go to user and user read all. And we grant the permission. Here we go. And then we need the secret, of course. And let's see, sorry, I put that video down. Okay, then we go to automation account. This is where we put our PowerShell script. So first of all, we create an automation account, give it a name, choose the subscription, create a resource group, and choose your region. And we create this one. Takes a couple of seconds to deploy. And we need to install a couple of PowerShell modules so that you can do through the modules gallery that's connected to PowerShell gallery. So we search for Teams. Click that one, import. And then we need the SharePoint PMP module. And import that one as well. Let's see here. And next, we're going to store this application secret inside a variable. It's stored securely. Great. And we also need to store the username and password for the accounts going to connect to the PMP PowerShell module and the Teams module. Quick jump here. And going to runbooks, create a runbook. And inside the runbooks, this is where you store your code. We paste our code there. And like that, and we need to import the credential variables that we created. You just click it there, add canvas, and the same for the application secret. So we're going to be a little short on time here, so jump a little ahead. And then we need to save and publish this one. And next, we go to Microsoft Forms to create a form that the users can fill in. So we give it a name and set it to required. We add another field, which we choose if this is a public team or internal or a private team. And you can also add a description field. And now we open up the share link, so we're going to fill in the form afterwards. Next step is going into PowerAutomate and click Create, Automated Flow. You give it a name, and you see the top trigger there when a new response is submitted. So every time a new response is submitted, this flow will be triggered. And select the form and the new step to get the details from the response. See? Get response. Choose the form again and the ID of that response. And next step is to start an approval process. And approve, reject. Then you specify a title. So when a new form is submitted, someone will get an email about approving or rejecting this. So you can choose who to have in there. So I'll specify my admin user. And after this is done, we need a condition. If it's approved, it goes to yes. If it's declined, it goes to no. And either way, it will send you an email regarding the outcome to the user. So we need to take a look at the responses, and if it's contains approve, it goes to yes. and click Add Action. And now we want to start an automation job in Azure. So we select Create Job and choose your subscription, resource group, and the automation account where the script is stored. And now when you select the runbook, you see the required parameters from that runbook is appearing. And then you can choose the data you get from the form and put it into there. And let's see what we are on time. Yeah, still have some time left. And we're also going to send an email that it has been approved and graded. I'm going to skip ahead there a little bit. So you put in the details about team, who has sent it, and so on. And you do the same on the other side if it's declined. So let's see here. So now we're going to test this, save and test. Now we're going to fill out the form to trigger this one. So we give it a name. And select that it's private and give it a description. And now we're going to go to our mailbox to see if we get a request there. Yeah. And we click approve. And we're going to go into Teams to see how quickly it starts being created. I see it almost instantly pops up and starts creating the team and all the channels. And see the channels are there in the file tab. You see also folders there, predefined folders. So that's a really short way. You can make this a lot more complex if you want, or even simpler if you want. So I like to at least have some sort of order form to be able to create teams in the tenant side provision. And there's one more community tool I'm going to show you before finishing off here today. And I know you have a lot of migration tools and so on, but there's actually a free tool that does a really decent job on migrating teams. It's probably, I'm not sure if he's in the room today, but at least he's at Comsverse. If you can say hi to Lee Ford, he created this script. So what it basically does, it takes a backup of your source tenant, all the channels, all the members, and the chat, and then it stores it as an HTML file, all the chat. And then you can recover it into a new tenant. So first of all, we're going to take a backup on the source tenant. Takes all the settings. The only thing you need to have is that you need to pre-provision the users in the new destination. See how neatly it's formatted and all things it copies. Let's see here. And now we're going to put it back into the destination tenant. Open link and authenticate. Now you see all the teams are being recreated and being populated. See here. And if you also take a closer look, you will see that the members are there too. If you add the guests with this automation, it takes some time before they appear in Teams. So if you take a look at the group of the team in Azure AD, you will see that the guests are already there. It just takes some time before they load. Let's see here. And that was it, I think. Just show the last PowerPoint slide here. So that's all I had today, and you can find a lot of content on Twitter about automation and also my blog, and I usually share a lot of automation-centered content there. So do anyone have any questions for me before we end here?
Thank you so much, Alex. And for the virtual attendees, you can raise your hands from Teams to ask a question.
Hey, Alex. Will you be making these scripts that you were just building, will you make these available as well?
Yeah, most of my scripts are already on my blog.
I get that, but then I just need to scroll through your blog and get all the bits and bobs. So it would be super useful if you would just say, okay, this was demo 1 and this was the PowerShell script.
I'll tweet about it in a couple of minutes.
Thank you.
No worries.
Can you take Comsware's? Any other questions?
See.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. We learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much for virtual attendees. See you in the next session. Take care. Have a great night. Bye.